I'm gonna call the meeting to order with that. Is everybody all right from
Yes,
that?
and so what happens now? Do we have, is Holyoke Media on already? And would they have seen that? I mean, you'd hate
They're
to have
not
it.
on. The Holyoke media is usually you see Scott's
Oh,
logged
they're
in.
not there. They're not there tonight.
Well, I sent him the
The link.
yeah, I sent him the link and he acknowledged when I sent
Okay.
it last week or whenever I sent it at the beginning of the week.
And we
Hopefully
are,
they'll all
Hopefully
right.
they're just running late.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
that'd be
Well,
great.
it's running late. That's
we are
right.
recording as well. Is that correct?
Here comes Muddy Bed.
All right. Here we go. Now we're at 6.
So anyway, it's kind of good that Holyoke Media was not hooked up at that point.
Yeah, we're
You missed the
officially.
excitement, Muddy Bell. We
Hey,
had a
Maribel. All right, I'm going to officially call the
Yeah.
meeting to order. 6:05. I'm going to take an attendance, please. Welcome everybody. Mary,
Yes.
Chris,
Here.
Pauline,
Here.
Sarah,
Here.
Maribel,
Here.
and Jay here. We have Michael and Lauren let us know ahead of time that they weren't going to be able to make it tonight, and Meg is running a little bit late today. So we have sort of a shorter agenda this evening. Did everybody receive the email I sent about an hour ago with an example of one of our contracts? I apologize. I meant to send that earlier. Sarah had asked me a couple of good questions about that, and I realized that perhaps not everybody's had the opportunity to look over one of our contracts and kind of get a good sense of it. So I apologize for the late addition there. But what I wanted to do to start the meeting is read, and I'm going to read it off of my email. What I refer to as the standard contract. Actually, I apologize. I'm getting ahead of myself. The first thing we need to do is approve the meeting minutes from the previous meeting. I apologize.
And those are 2 meetings in February, despite the January ones that got sent out first.
Yeah, so those are our meetings, February 7th and February 26th. Has everybody had an opportunity to review those? Are there any questions or concerns about those meeting minutes? I thought Mary did a great job. I referenced them several times recently. Mary?
No, I don't. I just want to apologize for the multiple emails that Naomi sent you. She did it on my direction. So if your mailboxes were overly full with all that junk, I'm sorry. And that's all.
Extra email. Come on.
So it's actually 3 minutes that we need to approve. So it's the 7th, the 26th, and the December minutes.
In the December.
Can we make a motion to include them all?
Yes, I would make a motion to add the December meeting minutes to our approval here. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Right. Okay, thank you. I'm just going to do a quick roll call vote for that. Mary?
Yes.
Chris? Helene?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Maribel?
Yes.
And Jay? Yes. All right. So that vote was just to add the December meeting minutes to what we're approving. Were there any questions or concerns? I thought, as is typical, Mary did a very nice job, and I thought it reflected our meeting exactly. So I don't hear any issues with that, so I'm just going to make a motion to accept the meeting minutes as written for February 7th, February 26th, and our December meeting. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Appreciate that. And I'm just going to do a roll call vote to approve those meeting minutes. Mary?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Pauline?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Maribel?
Yes.
And Jay, yes. All right. So agenda item number 1. So now that we've gotten to that, back to what I was saying is I would like to just read to the committee what I refer to as standard contract terms. These are terms If you want to reference the email that I sent you, it's item number 8 on the contract. It's just the terms that all of our contracts follow, and they're more like generalized. And I think when you hear them, you'll understand it. So I'm going to read these into the record, and with the thought that we will accept these as our standard contract terms that will apply to all of our contracts, and then we can add specific terms to other contracts for the projects. So the standard terms, as we have them written currently in our most recent contracts, is number one, that the recipient agrees to execute the proposed projects. I apologize, that is not correct. It's actually, I apologize. Recipient agrees to actively manage the project, require construction and materials for all submittals for all projects, products and processes used, and make regular construction observations as the.
Excuse me, Jay, would you like me to share the contract so people can be
Yeah,
looking at it?
actually, sure, that would be
Okay.
great.
All right.
That would be great, actually. Going through these, yeah.
Can people see that?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah. And if
Well,
you could scroll down to number 8, please. Thank you so much, Naomi, for that. I appreciate it. So item A is actually specific to the project. It's actually a term that we'll use or be proposed for other projects, but it's not in every single project. So going down from B down, no disbursement of funds will occur until the project in its entirety has received all necessary permitting approvals from all relevant municipal, state, and federal authorities. Recipient agrees to actively manage construction, require construction and material submittals for all products and processes used, and make regular construction observations as the work progresses, both on and off site. The recipient must display a temporary CPA sign provided by CPC on the premises during the duration of the rehabilitation. The recipient must cover the cost for and agree to display a permanent, approved, paid for by CPA sign in an appropriate location mutually acceptable to the parties. In the event that permanent signage already exists, additional text must be added to acknowledge funding for this project. In order to be considered for future funding cycles, grantees must adhere to all contract terms, including a permanent CPA sign, if required, which it will always be, and a final report. In the event that these contingencies are not met by the completion date, as described in it's actually term 4 above this grant will automatically terminate, and the funds reserved by the CPC will return to the CPA account without further encumbrance. So the term is always 36 months as well. It's a 3-year. That's how much time we give to complete projects. And some projects need longer than that, and in those instances, they can come before the CPA committee and request an extension to their contract, or otherwise we can just claw back the money. Naomi, would you scroll down to what I think it's number 12? It's the CPA. Could be a little bit further, perhaps. That's at 13. The community, this is just another general term that's in all our contracts. I just wanted to discuss a little bit ahead of time. Upon completion of the project, the recipient agrees to cover the cost for and post in an appropriate location mutually acceptable to the parties, a permanent sign stating that the project was funded through the City of Holyoke's Community Preservation Act program. In the event that permanent signage already exists, additional text must be added to acknowledge funding for this project. The sign and its content must be approved by the CPC administrator prior to its posting. The recipient shall also identify that the project was funded through the City of Holyoke's Community Preservation Act and any and all public-facing communications related to the project. Such communications will include an acknowledgement of CPA funding and the CPA logo, including but not limited to social media posts, websites, news interviews, and public-facing emails. So, yeah, so that is, I think we can stop screen sharing too. Appreciate that. So that's the basic, what I refer to as the standard contract terms that we put in all of our contracts. And I think that it's sort of a pain why that is. I mean, they just, they're in all the contracts because they apply to everybody. You know, you got to put up a sign, you have
Mhm.
3 years to complete your term. You have to acknowledge the CPA. Sarah.
Excuse me 1 second. We have interpreter and you're muted and I'm getting a request that they want to record to their computer. Interpreter, could you identify yourself, please? State your name and address for the record.
Interesting.
All right, I'm not going to approve your request because I don't know who you are. So I'm going to hit decline. If you want to identify yourself, could
Yeah.
I get a record permission, please? No, I don't know if you can hear me, but I'll take care. He's chatting with me now, so I'll just respond to that. You can keep
Yeah.
going, Jay.
Is it Scott? It could be Scott from Holyoke Media as well. If we can confirm that it's Scott, just to make
Oh, it
sure.
is Scott. Okay. Yep,
Yeah.
it's Holyoke Media. Never mind. Okay.
Appreciate it. Okay, I apologize. Sarah, you had your hand up?
Yes, I just had a question on one of the general terms that had to deal with permitting, and it had talked about no disbursement of funds is, going to be provided until all permits are received for a project. And I think in many instances that makes sense. But right now, one thing that's coming to my mind is Jones Point, for example, where even in order to get to a point where permitting can happen, funds had to be dispersed for a property survey. And that survey, is what is going to inform some of the permitting. So, in some instances, funds do have to be dispersed prior to receipt of all permits. So I just didn't know if there was a way to kind of make exception for that in projects that would require that.
Yeah, I would say as soon as I saw your hand up, I was like, I know, I knew I put it together. I said, I was because you're absolutely right. There is an excellent example of Jones Point, and Mary can speak to this as well, where we're going to have to spend money to find out where permitting will be needed. So it's true. It's true. I think, interestingly, though, for our current projects, I'm not sure that's going to be applicable.
I agree. I think for this round of projects, that's probably not applicable.
Yes, but I think,
Mary has her hand up.
yeah, Mary.
Okay, so in the future, we would, first of all, I really appreciated getting this copy in advance for the reason of B under 8 and number 10. I was particularly curious about both of those. I am really glad to see that they are in there. I think that our projects are supposed to come to us with those contingencies written in. And so in the future, we will all be more mindful. I think, for example, this phrase would have applied to both the YMCA and the tiny houses. In both cases, both of the applicants had done their due diligence and told us exactly how they were going to go about it. I think we want to be looking for that in the future. That way, when we write their contracts, we'll know what to expect and what's going to happen going forward. I think for the example that you just gave, I think we're going to have to make some kind of an exception, and I guess we'll just have to go forward with that. But for the contract for this year, I think that we are going to want to also put that in place for the Gloutak Park. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. Again, I don't know. Maybe there is no wetland. I think there is one, but so we just have to be mindful.
Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely. And I think, this is Gloutak is a very different beast from Jones Point in that, design isn't necessary for Gloutak. It's
right.
more kind of like a pick and choose. You can kind of put it in. You know where everything's going to go. You don't need that detailed of a survey and everything. I definitely think that general condition works. In most cases, it's just kind of there are some instances, and we might see things in the future where that could hang things up a little bit.
Mhm.
Yep. No, absolutely. And that's a great observation. And I think one of the reasons why we have these discussions in full committee, because, different sets of eyes see things differently. And, that makes, as soon as you started saying, I was like, yep, that makes complete sense, but I had not even thought of it. So, yeah. So let me think how we're going to move forward here though.
I think Chris is trying to raise his hand.
Yes.
Chris?
I just more of a question about the signage. I didn't really know anything about during the process, the temporary signs. I don't ever remember dealing with any of that.
Yep.
And then just thinking of the future, I know there was discussions about cemetery, just some of the issues of placement, et cetera. Is that something that would be more of a case by case basis as well, or?
Yeah, I think that's how we handled it with the Wayne's project, the
Mhm,
cemetery restoration, veterans grave project was,
mhm.
we tried to be a little bit more sensitive to, the feelings about signage in that. But
Okay.
yeah, I think there'll be case by cases where we're going to make some changes to these terms. I think they're definitely not as universally applicable as I kind of thought them to be. But I think in general we may keep these this time. Um, but yeah, and then to your other point of the temporary signage is that depending on the project, the nature of the project, we have banners and we also have yard signs, like
Okay.
I would say political style yard signs that we give to put up. I don't know how many are actually up, or our enforcement hasn't been excellent, but
Are
uh,
they in the office, those signs?
they're at my house actually. I
Oh,
moved
okay,
them from the office just because we are sharing space.
right.
Colleen.
I guess I just was going to say that I think even though, as things go, there might be need to make adjustments to an individual contract, and that when things are starting, it may be completely impossible for them to highlight everything that may not work. And for us, because again, some of those are volunteer. I mean, we're all volunteers. Some of the people who are running the projects are volunteers. However, I think to me, the standard in talking through this is kind of the expectation. And so if it's going to be a deviation, then I feel, then that's on the project to kind of explain why they need that deviation and for us to kind of document it. So not to say we can't have expectations, but we can't have, exceptions. But if we do, then it's clearly documented for equity and fairness why that was necessary in this other possibility, but not, if there's no problem with getting all your permits before starting, well, that's the standard, go for it. If that's not possible, then that's a different story, and an exception seems fair. But to have so for me, I'm looking at this more as like, are these the fair standard? And if anything's going to deviate, then that would be documented, and we decide whether that was appropriate or not. But to give, that everyone's kind of working off the same set of criteria essentially. And if so that's kind of what I'm seeing, and I think that leaves a room for exceptions and for changes. But having a core of, we agree, in principle, these things are all things that ideally would be done. So anyway, I think it sounds okay. I think we can't think of every possible thing with all the different contracts. And if things come up, it's okay, but we could probably vote on this as of now in terms of being the standard contract to go forward with.
Yeah, I would if there's not any other further discussion, I would make a motion that we just accept those terms, but with the caveat that alterations are known to be needed, something like that. We have an ability to alter those as needed. project to project.
Well,
Mary?
so you're gonna write a contract and put all these in, and at the end, you're gonna say if, exceptions can be made? I mean, I don't know, you need to phrase it exactly right so that it doesn't basically negate everything else you've just said.
Well, no, I think what we're going to do is we're just going to add these terms will continue to be in our contract as written, but that we just we're operating with the knowledge amongst ourselves that we can make
Oh, I see.
alterations and changes as needed specific to the project. I think that's the thought of that. That would be my motion.
So can I speak up even though I'm not on the committee? The contracts that we wrote at the agency I used to work at would say exceptions may be considered with exceptional circumstances, upon the whatever of the committee, or just one sentence like that. I don't know if you want to do that or not, but
I don't think so. I think I'd like to just keep it as is, and
Yeah.
then because we have so few contracts each year.
Yeah.
This year we'll only need 6 contracts. So I think I just like to do just case by case for those types of exceptions, if that would be all right. Yeah.
Second then, can we second? Yeah.
And can you tell me what the exact motion was again, please?
Yep, just to continue using the current conditions / restrictions in our contract language, as read into the record at the beginning of this agenda item.
Okay.
I wanted to read it into the public meeting, so I apologize for
Okay.
asking everyone to listen to that tedious
Okay.
part. But yep.
So that's just to warn you, that'll be a long section in the minutes. So, but that's fine.
Yes. So the motion's been made and seconded to accept the current conditions as read into the record. Mary,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Helene,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Maribel,
Yes.
and Jay, yes. Appreciate that. Discussion. So going through the projects as is listed in our agenda, I just have them in the order that they were approved in, 1 through 6. And I have some suggestions for how we might move forward. Essentially just based on what we've done with similar projects in the past. So for Gloutak Field, I reviewed, Naomi was kind enough to send over the contract that we had signed for Mayor Field. So I reviewed that and just got a sense of kind of similar style projects. So I have they're all very basic suggestions that I have for each project, but I like to go project by project, and I'll put forward some thoughts, and then perhaps we could have a discussion and make additions or subtractions to that, and then go through each project. So our first project, the Flats Community Building, my recommendation for a contract term would just be that we require a historic preservation restriction.
And it would be similar to what it says here for the retaining wall, right?
Yes, it would.
Oh, that's perfect wording, I think.
Yes. So that would be it for the flats as a special contract term. Did anybody have any thoughts on that, or any additional terms that we might consider for the flats community building? Pretty straightforward.
Can I ask a process question, Jay?
Yes.
So when we develop the contracts,
Yes.
do the contracts then go back to the full committee to be reviewed, or is that is that something that goes to Lisa and her team, or what's the process?
So in the past, the process has been this. It's been the committee discusses contract terms in full committee. and the contract subcommittee has been empowered in the past to make changes as needed. Being the chair of the committee and also being on the contract subcommittee, there are some back and forth, and you've seen this too, Naomi, as our admin, is there's back and forth with our grantees on the contracts, and it's all reasonable stuff, but there is some negotiation that kind of goes on, and terms are changed, and the city solicitor weighs in and makes sure that she's protecting the interests of the city, and that can change some of our language. There's a back and forth and to the contract. So in the past, the contract subcommittee has handled that because prior chairs have noted that it's a bit unwieldy to go back and forth between the meetings. It just takes too long to work out the contracts. My thought is that could continue, but with the caveat that any changes of any significance will be reported to the full committee, and that the subcommittee really is only empowered to make minor changes that are in keeping with the will of the committee. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
But doesn't it at some point go to the city attorneys?
Yeah, the city attorney's reviews all. She has to sign the city solicitor has to sign all of our contracts. So they review, and they're the ones who I might say put the hardest review in. They really go through it, and they give some very specific feedback and have some very specific questions that we need to track down sometimes. And they do a great job for us, and we really appreciate that. They've been great. They've been great, especially lately for us. So, but yeah, so they'll impose some terms, and there's a back and forth for sure. But yeah, that was the process that we've used in the past. Do folks feel comfortable maintaining that process? The contract, I'll also note too, the contract subcommittee is myself, Meg, former chair, and then Mike Falsetti, the vice chair. And also anybody else is welcome to join the committee or participate in that. So yeah, good question though, Naomi. I'm glad I was able to explain that a little bit or talk about that, because it's kind of a strange process. Okay, so the flats, I had proposed the historic preservation restriction. Does anybody have any additions or comments on that? Okay. So I'm going to do a roll call vote for that we adopt historic preservation restriction as a contract term for the Flats Community Building. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, I'm going to do a roll call vote on that. Mary.
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Helene.
Yes.
Sarah.
Yes.
Maribel.
Yes.
And Jay, yes. So 6-0, we have voted to add that as the one restriction or as the one contract term for the flats. So agenda item 2B was the Lawrence School improvements, was our second contract that we voted. So I talked to Meg about this in the past. We have not required any special terms or restrictions, historic restrictions on city properties. But this is sort of, I mean, it is a city property, but it's a school. It's not exactly a city property. So it's sort of a little bit of a gray area, but I think I thought about it. And I think that the way to move forward would be just to maintain our prior practice of not requiring a restriction on a city property. I think that, the work is going to be done in keeping as much as possible with the historic aesthetic of the building. But there's been a number of changes to the building, and it's also a public piece of property. So I think for that reason, my feeling is that we should not require special terms for the Lawrence School improvements. And I don't feel super strong about that. So if anybody wants to weigh in, but that was my initial thought. Mary.
Okay, I'm gonna raise something that I'm totally not in favor of, but I feel as
Yep.
though I have to because there were people that had different viewpoints
Yep.
on giving the money to a school.
Yep.
In some towns, when they give money to a school, they have a clawback phrase in the contract that says that if this school becomes something else in the next, whatever, 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, then the money has to come back. So in this particular case, I'm not in favor of it. We are only giving them $50,000. I don't think the school is going to be changed into something else magically in 3 years. But I feel compelled to raise it because that was one of the arguments that people did bring up when they talked about, giving money to schools. They could become something else. So I don't know what
Yeah.
you want to do with that.
I honestly think that's a great idea. I think that it sort of, allows the Lawrence School project a little bit more freedom that we give to the public properties, but it gives us a little bit of a covering. Because you're right. I think the argument against the school funding was that in the past, schools have been turned into something other than a school, and the funding has gone to waste. So this would kind of give us a little bit of a safety net for that potential outcome. And I think that it also is, I think it's just a good clean process to cover ourselves. I think that people in the city would appreciate that thoroughness from us, that we have that covered. I don't expect that to happen, but I think that it's an easy thing to insert, and I think that I would be in favor of inserting that if the committee felt comfortable with it. I just don't know how long we might do, perhaps 5 years, or if it were to become for example, a central storage for the school committee all of a sudden is now at Lawrence School. It's like I wouldn't I would want the $50,000 back if they did that. If it's school and we're helping our young people, I think that's one thing. But so Chris, I saw your hand up.
Do we have anything in place for city buildings? I mean, I know like with grants or something, if the use or the building changed, the money would go back. Is there any type of reverter clause that would cover, I don't know, maybe the whole thing, or not sure?
No,
No.
not currently, not currently. But I mean, as a special term, we could insert that. I think
Mhm.
would be good. Naomi.
I could look on the coalition's webpage. They have all sorts of examples of those kinds of things, or just ask them if that's a phrase that other
Yeah,
contracts.
that'd
I
be
can
some good
find out
information.
what other CPA communities do.
Yeah, that'd be great. But to Mary's point, would there be what might we propose as a term?
I'm thinking of less is better, like 3 years for this one. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. So the proposal would be that if the Lawrence School were to be used as something other than a school
No,
as its primary use within the next 3 years, that the funding would revert back to the CPA account.
Is there going to be an expiration date or anything, or just the 3 year?
You could say 3 years from the signing of the contract. Do we feel comfortable with that as an addition for the Lawrence School? Kind of a
Sure.
3 year window. It's got to stay as a school. If it turns into anything else as its primary use, we get our money back. That would be the spirit of the proposal. Any thoughts on that? Okay. Would there be a second to that? I suppose I'll make that proposal that we add that language to our contracts. We could have the contract subcommittee work out some specific language that might work better. But Mary, might you suggest some language that we could use?
yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not even thrilled with the concept, but I felt as though I should bring it up. I don't know. I can't think of anything. But I do know that in other towns, that's what they've started doing because they gave examples of schools being taken down and you become something else, you know. So I can't think of any specific language.
Okay, I'm gonna make a proposal for language. It'd be that in the event that the Lawrence School usage is changed to something other than a school within 3 years of signing the contract, this grant will automatically terminate and the funds reserved will return to the CPA account without further encumbrance.
I'll second it.
That sounds good, yeah.
We feel good about that?
Mhm.
So on that motion, Mary,
Uh, I guess yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Helene?
I'm abstaining for all things related
Oh,
to
yes.
schools.
Yes, yep, yep, absolutely. Sarah,
Yes.
Maribel,
Yes,
Jay, yes. So 5-0. We're just gonna require that Lawrence it remains a school for 3 years, otherwise the funds will revert back. Great. So our third project was the Gloutak Playground. And I did not have any specific contract language for Gloutak. Did anybody feel that we should add anything in particular for Gloutak Field? It is a city property. Sarah?
I don't know about adding anything in like, I guess I'm kind of going back to one thing, that was discussed when we were looking to award it, and Mary brought up a really valid concern that there were, several different options given for a playground, and that especially given the sensitive nature of where Glutak is. The CPA, and I think in conjunction with the Conservation Commission should really kind of direct exactly what option is selected. And is there a way to kind of include more information in the contract on the exact description of the layout of the playground, just to kind of make sure that, kind of the preferred option is selected?
Yeah, so I can actually update and should have updated us first. So the scope of work, I had spoken with Tom, because there were some concerns about the surface. It was that rubber surface, which brings us into a host of other responsibilities. So I spoke with Tom about that, and he noted that he could and would move forward with the M.E. O'Brien option with wood chips and accessories, which would include the table and the covering. It's sort of like, I don't want to say it's an umbrella. It's quite a bit nicer than that, but it looks sort of like a giant umbrella, I think is the one that they had selected. But it's essentially a place to sit that's shaded, and then also a playground with the wood chips. That was the scope for the Glutek project, which I think saves us a little bit. We'll with some of the wetlands concerns, not completely, but yes. But perhaps we could subtract the contract term related to permitting for that. We could talk about doing that if you thought we should.
That actually wasn't what I was getting at. I think with that one, there's no design activities or anything. So, it should get reviewed prior to expending any funds, just because right now it seems like all the information is available to be able to start that permitting process. I just really wanted to make sure, just kind of going back to, when we were looking at funding, just kind of making sure that in the contract we had hashed out and had some language hashing out, what option was going to move forward with.
Yes. Yeah. So so it would be that option, the ME O'Brien, but with instead of the rubberized surface, it would be wood chips, and then what Tom refers to as accessories, which I take to mean the bench, a sitting area, table, and a place that provides shade. There are a bit of trees out in that section anyway. There's some good shade anyway, but good covering for people to sit and have a picnic or something like that. But yeah, I think with that scope, I think I would feel comfortable just moving forward as is if everybody feels the same. There are no
Yes.
particular terms. Okay. All right. So for D is the YMCA pickleball courts. So the proposal that I have for that would be that we sign a memorandum of understanding about public access to the courts. And I got a response from Connor, a very specific one. That essentially it'll be open to members and non-members. It'll be open only during the hours that the YMCA is open. And then there will be some carve outs during the daytime because there's youth programming that goes on that kind of uses space adjacent to that. So they're going to block out a few sections during the day for that, but it'll essentially be open most of the week, weekends, nights. And both members and non-members can utilize the court, but we're gonna have to work out a specific memorandum with the Y to do that. But the proposal that would be that we sign a memorandum of understanding with the Y regarding public access. Is there any discussion on that point? Any concerns? Any other concerns?
I second it.
All right. Motion made and seconded. Thank you, Mary. For the memorandum of understanding for the YMCA. Mary,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Helene,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Maribel, yes.
Yes.
And Jay, I'm going to just abstain from that vote because of a prior conflict. Inspired by Helene's abstention prior, which I like. All right. So that brings us on to bullet point E. The tiny home. Okay.
So we always have some kind of a, do we have standard language somewhere for that because I know when we've done tiny homes in the past, we've always had language for making sure that it always goes to low income
Yes.
residents. Do we have that somewhere?
We do. So yes,
Okay.
so they're going to sign the proposal that I think we should do is that they have to file affordability restriction on the property. The proposal is that it's 10% below, at least 10% below market rate for the tiny home, and that will be one Holyoke's responsibility as well to do that. And then the second proposal for the tiny home is that they sign a written agreement with Alicia Zeller's office, which is, I have to always Google it because I can't remember the name of it. Is
Community development or something?
Community development, yeah. Somehow I can never remember that, but sign a written agreement with the community development Alicia Zeller's office about affordability oversight. So they're going to have to, number one, get an affordability restriction. And then number two, sign an agreement with Alicia to monitor to make sure that that restriction is being followed. And that was Mary and I can give a long presentation about how all that process works. But it's after a number of meetings and emails and conversations with folks, that was what we established as the best practice for CPA projects. A lot of our projects in the past had oversight provided by the state or federal government, but some of the projects this year, all of them, and interestingly, didn't have any state or federal funding, so it didn't come with the oversight that's typical of our projects. So we were forced to sort of research and figure out that component of it. And Michael, to his credit, came up with a solution of other, somebody in the city or paying somebody to provide oversight. So those would be my two proposals for the tiny home, which is A, that they get a affordability restriction, B, that they sign a written agreement with Alicia's office to monitor that restriction. Chris.
Anything with maybe, again, I guess just looking, oh my gosh. What about a lease or something? It's not do we know anything, a lease, month to month, a yearly lease, stipulations of how long they have to
Yep.
stay
So
in the-
Yep. So it's no short-term rentals. It has to be a long-term rental. And
But
it
what
has
do
to be,
you mean by that? Is there verbiage on that long term? Does it?
I believe it's longer than 12 months, but I can confirm what that means exactly. I don't know offhand though. But that was part of Michael's proposal too, that they weren't going to allow. They didn't want it to turn into like well, I mean, this is a rental property that they maintain, but we had the other 160 Pine Street, which would have been an accessory dwelling unit. So we didn't want to see that. Is that Meg? All right.
Hopefully.
It is.
I know,
It's
I
me.
know. All right.
Hi.
We're all traumatized. But yeah, those are the terms that I would propose for the tiny home. Meg, just to bring you up to date with our current conversation, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but we're on the tiny home discussion, and the two proposals are that they, number one, get an affordability restriction, and number two, they sign a written agreement with Alicia to provide oversight of that restriction.
Yeah, both of those make total sense.
Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Motion made and seconded on my proposal. Mary.
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Helene.
Yes.
Sarah.
Yes.
Maribel.
Yes.
Meg.
Yes.
And Jay, yes. Okay, so we've adopted those two terms for the tiny home. Okay. And our final project is, of course, the stained glass windows. And I actually have no proposed special terms for the stained glass windows. That we use our prior contract. They do have a sign already, as we all know, and it's a pretty straightforward project. Were there any thoughts or discussions on that? All right, so we'll move forward with none on that. And that concludes the bulk of our meeting is agenda item 2. So agenda item 3 is just some updates I wanted to try to give to everybody. Naomi can attest, and certainly Meg, that throughout the month there's I don't even know if I want to say dozens or hundreds of emails that come through from various departments and such. So I always want to try to keep the committee updated on those things, but without inundating you with minutia. But two of the more significant updates that I noted in our agenda are the Granite Stairs. So I spoke with Victoria at length. She's the she was serving as the interim city engineer. She's still working with the city and working with Matt Sokop, who's our new city engineer. And we discussed the Granite Stairs project. So essentially, when we were finalizing the contract to the Granite Stairs, the thing that really Meg was saying, and I agreed with, was that we wanted to make sure that this study resulted in workable construction documents. Essentially, they do this study, then they can get to work. That was what we. That's what we approved. That's what was approved by the committee, as I understand, and that's what was discussed in our contract negotiations with the city about the Granite Stairs. So as we got deeper into the process, and this wasn't Victoria's proposal as well. It was something that somebody else had brought forth, and then she sort of picked up midway through. She thought that was possibly the case, that we'd be able to do this study and get to work, but she couldn't guarantee it. She's not sure that that's the case, and so there's sort of like an ambiguity there about what, we don't want to, what we're trying to avoid is is paying for a study that recommends that we do another study and then get to work. You know what I mean? We're trying to not do that. So in our attempt to avoid that, the option that may end up, Victoria is still speaking with Matt and she's kind of looking into it, but it seems like the option that we're leaning toward is that the project will be, I don't want to use the term rescinded, but reverted back to the committee and perhaps recycled into a different project in the future. Because what I didn't want to do was force it and then end up with a bad result, because we just weren't sure how it would come out. And that's kind of where we are with that project. And I know that's kind of a sloppy explanation, but the best I had. Mary.
Okay, so an architect was engaged and his expertise was in historic restorations.
Mhm.
And he was supposed to look at what needed to be done and establish, what contractors could do that and sort of a timeline. What happens? Does he get paid?
No, they didn't do anything yet. They just.
Oh, they didn't even do
No.
that.
They didn't. So there's not been any work done that we need to pay. We're not on the hook for anything.
Okay.
But as the historic architects sort of delved into the contract as written, they realized that we were asking for more or expecting more than they had expected to deliver for the price that they had bid at. And there was sort of a
Yeah.
gray area there. So that's what happened. Yeah. So it was, and it's a substantial difference too. It was, I believe we awarded 30,000 and the quote was like 90,000 for
Yeah.
the thing. And we were like, so that's kind of the update on the Granite Stairs. And we don't have a firm commitment, but just, I spoke with Victoria, I think it was last Thursday, something like that, for a while, for like a half hour about it. And, I think that's she's going to speak with Meg and she's going to follow up with us about, what we want to do to move forward. And we let her know too that we're flexible. We want to be supportive of the project and the city, but, I let her know basically our concerns of, we didn't want to study recommending another study, and we didn't want to, put ourselves in a bad position. So that's the update with the Granite Stairs. Were there any other questions or concerns on that one?
Is there a time limit on the safety of the stairs?
That I don't know. I mean, they're not in great shape. I don't know if they're at safety issue level yet. They may be. It's definitely getting there. But
Okay.
I don't know what the thought is. I know, there's a lot, I think, updates that they hope that they can do to City Hall. And I think we're, certainly I'd be amenable to being a part of that. But yeah, that's where we were with that one. And then the other update was the fire truck. Oh, I apologize, Meg.
I just wanted to chime in and say that also, if you notice the application that came to us for eligibility this year around the city hall, they're now really wrapping this small piece of the project around the annex pillars and the city hall stairs into a much wider full-on capital redevelopment of the city hall, because I think the deeper they went, the more they realized it wasn't just this one or two pieces. It really was holistically a lot of work that had to get done on city hall. And so it no longer, I think, makes sense after, we sort of started this process to continue with this project, given that we can actually get a much better bang for our buck financially as a city using taxpayer funding to do a study that then preps us to do a large number of these projects in City Hall, rather than bid out just for these two small pieces that can be very expensive. I think your taxpayer would have a really hard time understanding why it would take $90,000 for us to be able to then start the work on these two elements of the buildings. It doesn't make sense financially for us to do that.
Yep. Absolutely. And then the other update I had was the fire truck project. I heard from Tom Shea, and I can actually just read his communication into the record. I think it gives a pretty good update of it. Hi, Jason. The fire truck is looking fantastic. The floorboards for the interior of the cab have been installed. Sullivan Steel is fabricating diamond plate inserts for the interior floorboards. The hose bed has been sandblasted, primed. The interior components of the hose bed have been finished with a rhino liner type finish. At each time I work on the fire truck, I bring some of the finished chrome to install. Once I install the diamond plate, he's going to contact me to arrange a viewing to come and see the fire truck. And I was going to let everybody in the committee know when that is, if we want to try to go take a look at the fire truck and see what it looks like. Honestly, I just want to see it. I think it's interesting, and I think I wanted to see it. Yes, sweetie, I'm almost done with the meeting. I'll be right with you. Need something? Okay. I'm sorry about that. So that's the update with the fire truck. Were there any questions about that? It's been a long process for the fire truck project, but it's just a very unique one. And I think Tom also did have that issue where one of their primary folks that were doing the restoration was injured and was unable to do work for a time. Meg.
I was just wondering if it would be ready for the parade this year, or if it would be the parade next year.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's going to be ready this year, unfortunately. I think, yeah, certainly next year would be the goal, or some other parade prior to that. I think the hope was that it would be, I know I had joined the committee last year, and the hope was that it would be ready for the parade last year. But, Tom's been, working on it, and he's been in communication as well. So I have to give him credit there, about, just the issue that he had with the injury. And, yeah, so that's the current update. And certainly, if anybody wants me to follow up with Tom about anything specifically, I can do that. Okay. All right. Our last order is just before we wrap it up, is Naomi has been doing a great job, I should say. She's taken a lot of initiative and starting to really like bring proposals to me that are useful to the committee, and I appreciate that. And one of those, there's been several, but one of those is the Community Preservation Committee membership list. Are you able to share that, Naomi? Do you have that?
I do have it if you want to see it.
Yeah, actually, yeah. I think we can.
You
pull
can
it up.
imagine. I mean, I do have it ready. My question was, so just backing up, one thing I do want to say is Maribel just left. She had let me know she was leaving at 7.
Okay.
She had another commitment. Amy left me a list of useful numbers within the city, which I then formatted and printed out for my own use. And then I asked Jay if there was a similar list for committee members, and he said no. So I merged that, and I created a list of all of us with our email this is just a simple little thing. It's no big deal. And the question I had for the group was, I have some phone numbers. Are people comfortable sharing a phone number? It does not have to be your personal number. It can be a work number or whatever number you would use for committee work. And that way we would all have it. It would be a private document and we would all have it so we can get in touch with one another. And so I do have that almost done, but I wanted to bring it up tonight just to check in about phone numbers. And if people are okay with that, then I will gather the phone numbers from you via email individually.
Yeah, and if not, that's no big deal too, because we have
It's not that.
yeah, we
Right.
have everybody's email, and it's just, if you feel comfortable with your cell phone being shared with the committee members as well, just to facilitate communication, and perhaps you want to check in or follow up with a certain member, just to sort of make it more accessible. And if anybody, essentially, just the request is if everybody feels comfortable with that, just to let either myself or Naomi know, and just share your number with her, and we can we'll keep that. It'll be like an in-house document. I think maybe we'll have it exist on the everyone will get it in an email. We could have it exist on the website, but in the members only section, if that works. And I appreciate it. I appreciate the good work, Naomi, and the thought on it. Any questions
I was
on?
frustrated looking at fiscal documents, so I did that because it's more fun.
I completely understand. I do. And then old business, I just would like to note that Meg has kept her streak of CPA attendance active by making the so I referred to her earlier as the Cal Ripken of the CPA committee. So we appreciate that, Meg. Were there any other questions or concerns about the meeting? I apologize deeply for the incident at the beginning. I don't know what the name for that is, but it is what it is.
Foreign intrusion.
Yes. And
Another one?
Oh yeah.
It's really bad.
bad one. I do apologize. We'll try to keep our we'll try to do our best. It's just one of, we also want to be available to folks and have people be able to participate in our process. So it's
not in that way though.
What's weird about it is there's a waiting room, and everyone else, including Holyoke Media, who signed on as interpreter, I let them in, and I didn't let James in. It was just, so I don't know what kind of hack exists that they can just drop into our meeting, but
You can look at the Zoom settings too, around just how is it set up and is there anything we have to do?
well, yeah, so you either have to have a passcode or a waiting room, the way the city Zoom is set up. So we do a waiting room because I think that's easier for you guys than having to type in a passcode.
Yeah.
So those are the two options.
Yeah.
Well, you can always set it up so everyone goes to the waiting room regardless of passcode, because
That's how it is. Yeah, but no passcode is needed. That's how we have it. But this James got in anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, I appreciate everybody tonight. I know it wasn't the most exciting meeting. It was a bit tedious for me, contract terms and such. I have to admit it's not my favorite part of it, but I think we got done what we needed to get done, and I think certainly any changes or anything of significance, I'll make sure to communicate that with the committee as we go forward. Is there any other questions or comments prior to ending the meeting?
No.
All right. Appreciate everybody. Enjoy the month, enjoy the warm weather, and be safe.
Nice.
Thank you. Goodbye.